Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring a world.
A world.
Yeah, a world
Absolutely.
that's both fascinating and often overlooked, the world of the Plantation Church.
Absolutely.
So using Noel Leo Erskine's book, Plantation Church, as our main guide, we'll also be diving into some historical accounts.
Yes.
Personal narratives.
Absolutely.
Even some really powerful song lyrics.
Really powerful, yeah.
So get ready.
You ready?
To uncover this complex story of how African religious traditions and Christianity kind of intertwined during slavery in the Americas.
We're not just dusting off some old history books. No, we're talking about beliefs and practices that continue to echo in communities across the globe even today.
Exactly. And you know, it's amazing how a single question can really get you thinking about your own identity and heritage. In Plantation Church, Erskine's grandparents would always ask him,
oh, yeah?
Where do you stand in relation to Africa? What a powerful question, right?
Okay. It is, especially when you consider the deliberate attempts to sever those connections during slavery.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine yourself ripped from your homeland, stripped of your language and customs.
Right.
That question takes on a whole new meaning.
Absolutely. And the crazy thing is, despite those attempts to erase their culture, enslaved Africans found incredible ways to hold on to their heritage. They hid their rituals, blended them with the Christianity they were forced to adopt.
They had to.
Talk about resilience.
It really highlights the power of belief.
Yeah.
The need to connect with something larger than oneself.
Yeah.
Even in the face of unimaginable hardship.
For sure, Erskine even talks about how his father's Baptist faith had roots in the teachings of George Leo, an African-American preacher who made a huge impact in the Caribbean.
Big impact.
But his grandparents, they held on to something older, something deeper, passed down through generations. And that's the thread we're going to follow today. How did these different beliefs and practices come together?
That's right.
How did enslaved Africans navigate those spiritual waters?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's dive into the transatlantic slave trade for a moment.
Right.
We all know it was brutal, but I was blown away by the sheer scale of it.
The scale.
Millions of Africans forced from their homes. It's mind-boggling.
And what's often overlooked is that this forced migration didn't start with Jamestown in 1619.
Oh, really?
It began much earlier in the 16th century.
Wow.
With the Caribbean serving as a major hub for the slave trade.
So the Caribbean played a huge role in shaping the religious landscape of the Americas.
Absolutely. Think about it. This was often the first landing point for enslaved Africans.
Right.
It was where they first encountered Christianity, where those initial cultural collisions took place.
Right.
It makes the Caribbean a crucial piece of the puzzle when we talk about the Plantation Church.
It's like this melting pot of different African traditions.
It is.
All thrown together with European Christianity. Yeah. What a chaotic but ultimately creative mix.
Speaking of creative mix, the concept of shipmates is a powerful example of how bonds were forged in the fires of trauma.
Oh, wow.
Mints and Price and the birth of African American culture.
Yeah.
Talk about how the shared experience of the Middle Passage created connections that transcended tribal affiliations.
Wow. So being chained together in the hold of a slave ship actually created a new kind of family.
Exactly. And those bonds became so strong that the term shipmate evolved to mean brother or sister within enslaved communities.
Oh, wow.
It was even considered taboo to have relations with a shipmate because the bond was viewed as sacred.
That's incredible. So even in the depths of dehumanization,
it is.
They found ways to create meaningful connections and build a sense of belonging.
Yes.
It speaks volumes about the human need for community.
It really does. But now let's shift gears and talk about the church.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't just a bystander in all of this.
Yeah, it seems like the church played a really complex, even contradictory role.
You got to understand this. Let's take a look at Bartolomé de las Casas.
Okay.
He was a priest who initially supported slavery.
Right.
But later became a fierce advocate for indigenous people.
Wait, wasn't he the guy who actually suggested bringing in Africans as slaves?
That's right. Las Casas initially questioned the humanity of indigenous people.
Oh, wow.
Using that as a justification for their enslavement.
Yeah.
Later, he proposed replacing them with African.
Okay.
Whom he believed were stronger and better suited for grueling labor.
That's messed up on so many levels.
It really is.
It really shows how twisted the logic of colonialism was.
It does, and it highlights the church's contradictory stance.
Right.
On one hand, promoting Christianity, and on the other, upholding the very institution that enslaved and dehumanized millions.
It's like they were offering salvation with one hand while holding a whip in the other.
Exactly. And to add another layer of complexity,
Yeah.
the church often used scripture to justify the master-slave relationship.
Oh, right, like those passages about slaves obeying their masters.
Exactly.
It's hard to imagine how enslaved Africans reconciled their own beliefs with this version of Christianity being forced upon them.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Think about it. You're being told to worship a God who seemingly condones your suffering,
Right.
while also holding on to traditions that teach about a world where everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
How do you make sense of that?
It's mind-blowing. You're trying to hold on to your faith.
Yeah.
But you're also facing this unimaginable cruelty. How could their gods allow this to happen?
It was a question that haunted many enslaved Africans.
I bet.
In Plantation Church, Erskine shares a quote from Sister Kelly,
Okay.
an enslaved woman from Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
She asks, "Does a righteous God govern the universe?"
Oh, wow.
Her words are heart-wrenching.
That's heavy, and it wasn't just her.
Right.
Frederick Douglass also wrestled with doubt and questioned the existence of a just God after witnessing horrific treatment of his fellow slaves.
It's a testament to their resilience that they didn't simply abandon their beliefs.
Right.
They found ways to adapt and create new frameworks for understanding their experiences.
So how did they reconcile their beliefs with the horrors of slavery? Where did they find hope?
Well, let's look at the Yoruba creation story.
Okay.
In this tradition, the supreme being, Olodumare,
Yeah.
delegates tasks to lesser deities,
Okay.
creating a world where everything is interconnected and infused with spirit power.
So there's this understanding that the sacred and the secular are intertwined.
Yeah.
That everything happens for a reason.
For a reason.
It's a far cry from the European worldview that compartmentalized religion and everyday life.
Exactly. And this worldview shaped how they understood destiny.
Oh, wow.
Imagine destiny like a river.
Okay.
You're on a predetermined path.
Right.
But you can still choose how to navigate it.
Right.
That's the idea behind the Decan concepts of Enkrobia and Haibia.
Interesting.
Enkrobia refers to a destiny imposed by God, while Haibia represents a self-chosen destiny.
So even within a preordained path, there's room for free will and individual choice.
Exactly.
It's like acknowledging the power of a higher force while still claiming agency in your own life.
Precisely. And that tension, that struggle to find meaning and purpose amidst suffering, is a defining feature of the African religious experience in the Americas.
Even though their gods might have seemed silent, they found ways to hold on to faith, to believe in a divine plan that would ultimately lead to liberation.
It's a testament to the power of belief.
Right.
The human capacity for hope, even in the darkest of times.
And it's from this darkness, from this struggle for survival, that Black churches began to emerge.
Yes, these weren't just houses of worship.
Right.
They were spaces of resistance, community, and cultural preservation.
Oh, wow.
They offered a refuge from the dehumanizing world of slavery.
So they provided comfort and hope, but they were also places where they could organize and resist their oppressors.
Absolutely. And the role of Black preachers like Richard Allen, the founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, was crucial.
Yeah.
They provided leadership, challenged the status quo, and created spaces where Black people could gather and find strengths in their shared faith.
And music played a central role too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially spirituals.
Exactly. Songs like "Oh Freedom" and "Slavery Chain Done Broke at Last" weren't just expressions of faith.
Right.
They were anthems of liberation, carrying coded messages of hope and resistance.
Oh, wow.
Imagine these songs echoing through the fields, giving voice to the voiceless.
What a powerful image. They were literally singing their way to freedom, so they resisted both overtly and covertly, finding ways to challenge the system while also navigating it for survival.
And that's where the tension between conformity and skepticism comes into play.
Right.
They had to outwardly conform to the demands of their enslavers, but inwardly, they held onto their own beliefs and traditions.
It's like they were living double lives, putting on a mask for the master while nurturing their true selves in secret.
It's exactly what W.E.B. Du Bois called double consciousness.
Right.
This sense of being both inside and outside of the dominant culture.
Yeah.
And they did this while facing unimaginable pressure.
And even as they adopted Christianity, they didn't abandon their African traditions altogether, right?
No way. African religious practices like Obia and Mayal continued to thrive underground, offering spiritual protection and a sense of empowerment.
It's like they were creating their own spiritual arsenal.
It is.
Drawing from both African and Christian traditions to survive and resist.
And this created some interesting clashes with the church.
Oh, really?
For example, African marriage customs often conflicted with the Christian ideals that missionaries were trying to promote.
So it wasn't just a harmonious blend.
Yeah.
Or definitely some points of friction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But even in those clashes, we see the ingenuity and adaptability of enslaved Africans.
Right.
They weren't just passively absorbing Christianity.
Right.
They were actively shaping it, making it their own.
This reminds me of the ticket and leader system that some Black churches use.
Ah, yes. A great example of how they combined African ways of thinking with Christian structures.
I'm dying to know more about that. It sounds fascinating.
Well, let's unpack that when we come back. This deep dive is just getting started.
All right, so you're about to tell us about this ticket and leader system.
Yeah.
It sounds like they were basically creating their own mini societies within the church.
It really was a remarkable adaptation. Think of it this way.
Okay.
The congregation would be divided into groups,
Okay.
often based on where they came from in Africa.
Right.
Or maybe family ties.
Okay.
Each group had a leader responsible for their spiritual well-being.
So these leaders were kind of like spiritual guides drawing on both African and Christian traditions.
You could say that they offered guidance, support,
Right.
and even acted as mediators within the community.
Okay.
And those tickets weren't just slips of paper.
Wait, what were they? Then I'm picturing something a bit more mystical.
You're on the right track.
Okay.
Those tickets were often seen as protective charms,
Oh, wow.
objects imbued with spiritual power.
Okay.
It's a fascinating example of how African beliefs about objects and rituals found their way into Christian practices.
It really shows how enslaved Africans took ownership of their faith, blending it with their own cultural understandings to create something uniquely powerful.
Exactly. They weren't just conforming anymore.
Right.
They were innovating, adapting,
Right.
and reshaping Christianity to fit their own needs and experiences.
And this creativity wasn't limited to the church.
No.
It spilled over into music, art, storytelling, all aspects of their lives.
Absolutely. It's like this incredible burst of creative energy.
Yeah.
Fueled by that yearning for freedom and self-expression. Think about the connections between the Caribbean and the American South.
Oh, yeah, like Barbados and South Carolina.
Yes.
Weren't a lot of enslaved people brought to South Carolina from the Caribbean?
Exactly. In his book, Holding Aloft the Banner of Ethiopia,
Okay.
Winston James talks about how Barbados was a major source of enslaved labor for South Carolina.
Right.
So you have this flow of people,
Yeah.
and with them comes a blending of cultures and religious beliefs.
It makes so much sense. The seeds of the Plantation Church were already present in South Carolina,
Yes.
brought over from the Caribbean, along with the people who were forced to work the land.
And those seeds found fertile ground.
Yeah.
You have this shared sense of identity, a connection to Africa that transcended geographical boundaries.
Right.
It's no coincidence that places like South Carolina became hotbeds of resistance.
And then, of course, you have the Haitian Revolution.
Yeah.
What a powerful symbol of resistance.
It was.
It must have terrified slaveholders across the Americas.
It absolutely sent shockwaves through the entire slaveholding world. Imagine it.
Yeah.
Enslaved people rising up, overthrowing their masters,
Oh.
and creating a free and independent Black republic. It was unthinkable to the planter class.
What a powerful testament to the human desire for freedom.
It is.
The Haitian Revolution proved that it was possible to break free from the chains of slavery.
And that message resonated across the region.
Yeah.
In places like Cuba and Brazil, fear gripped the hearts of slave owners.
Wow.
They knew that the seeds of rebellion had been sown.
But you can't suppress the human spirit forever.
You cannot.
The desire for liberation finds a way, whether it's through music, religion, or even everyday acts of defiance.
It's that constant push and pull,
Yeah.
that struggle to hold on to your identity in a system designed to erase it.
It's what our sources call negative history, right?
Yes.
That deliberate attempt to rob enslaved people of their past, their culture, their very sense of self.
It was a psychological weapon.
Yeah.
But even in the face of this erasure, they found ways to reclaim their history
Right.
for storytelling music
Yeah.
and passing down traditions.
Okay.
They kept those embers burning.
And, the church itself could be a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
On one hand, it was used as a tool to control enslaved people,
Yeah.
but it also provided a platform for resistance and empowerment.
It's such a fascinating paradox.
Right.
Think about the sermons they were forced to listen to.
Yeah.
Messages of obedience, acceptance, finding solace in the afterlife.
But at the same time, they were also hearing about a God who liberates the oppressed, who sides with the downtrodden.
Talk about mixed messages.
Yeah.
They had to navigate this incredibly complex spiritual terrain.
And they did it with such creativity.
They did.
They took the Christianity that was imposed upon them
Right.
and infused it with their own beliefs, their own experiences, their own understanding of the divine.
It's like they were remixing the faith,
Yeah.
turning it into something uniquely their own.
This whole conversation makes me think of Denmark Vesey and his planned uprising in Charleston.
Oh, yes.
He was a leader in the African Methodist Episcopal Church.
He was.
But he also drew inspiration from his African roots.
Oh, yes, the Vesey Conspiracy of 1822. What a powerful example of how religion could be used to fuel resistance.
Vesey saw the Bible as a tool of liberation. He used it to rally his followers and inspire them to fight for their freedom.
And he didn't just rely on Christian teachings.
Right.
He worked with a conjurer named Gulajak,
Okay.
incorporating African spiritual traditions into the movement.
Wow.
It was a true fusion of beliefs,
Wow.
all aimed at dismantling the system of slavery.
Sadly, the plot was betrayed, and Vesey and many of his supporters were executed.
Yes, it is a tragic story.
Yeah.
But it also reveals their unwavering determination.
Right.
Even in the face of brutal repression, they never gave out hope.
They continued to resist, to assert their humanity, and to imagine a future free from oppression.
Their legacy lives on in the Black churches that thrive today.
Yeah.
Those spaces still echo with the spirit of resistance,
Yeah.
the yearning for justice, and the enduring power of faith. It's amazing to think about how the very act of gathering for worship was itself a form of defiance,
Absolutely. They created a space where they could be themselves. They did.
where they could express their faith and their culture without fear. It was a powerful act of self-determination.
And it wasn't just about the physical space.
Right.
It was about creating a mental and spiritual sanctuary
Yeah.
where they could find solace, strength, and a sense of belonging.
That sense of community was vital.
It was.
It gave them the strength to endure the unimaginable, to keep fighting for a better future even when hope seemed lost.
There's this line from Plantation Church that really stuck with me.
Okay.
Erskine talks about how for enslaved Africans, the New World was their Egypt. And they were the children of Israel longing for exodus.
Such a powerful metaphor.
It captures that deep yearning for liberation, that belief that they were destined for something greater than the bondage they were enduring.
And that faith, that belief in a brighter future, it sustained them through the darkest of times.
It did. And it's out of that darkness, that crucible of suffering and faith.
That something truly remarkable was born, a new blend of African and Christian traditions, a faith that was both resilient and revolutionary.
So where does the story go from here?
That's a great question.
What happens when that external pressure of slavery is finally lifted?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
How did the Black church evolve after emancipation?
Right.
What new forms of religious expression emerged?
We'll explore those questions and more when we come back. This deep dive is far from over.
We're back and ready to explore what happened to those blended faiths after emancipation.
Yeah, it's like a whole new chapter in this story.
It is, right, with the chains of slavery broken.
Yes.
You'd think maybe those African traditions would resurface even more strongly.
Yeah, you would think that, right? Like maybe they ditch Christianity altogether and just return to their roots.
Yeah.
It's a natural assumption, but it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
Think of it less as a complete rejection of Christianity and
Yeah.
more as an opportunity to reshape it.
So instead of a clean break? Yeah.
It was more about taking ownership of their faith
Yes.
and molding it into something that truly reflected their own experiences and heritage.
Exactly. And this fusion of traditions, it didn't just survive, it thrived.
Okay.
It led to some truly innovative and dynamic forms of religious expression within the Black community.
It's like they were finally free to create a faith that resonated with their souls on a deeper level.
Precisely. And remember that ticket and leader system we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
It really took off after emancipation.
Yeah, remind me how that worked again.
Okay.
It sounded like such a unique blend of African social structures and Christian organization.
Imagine this. You walk into a church.
Okay.
And instead of traditional pews, the congregation is divided into groups based on their shared heritage.
Okay.
Each group has a leader who acts as their spiritual guide and advocate.
So it's like having these mini communities within the larger church.
It is.
What a cool way to maintain those ancestral ties while also embracing a new faith.
And those figures weren't just for show. They were often seen as tangible representations of spiritual power,
Okay.
offering protection and connecting them to a deeper ancestral wisdom.
It's amazing how they took something as simple as a ticket and imbued it with so much meaning.
Right.
It really speaks to the creativity and adaptability of the Black religious experience.
It wasn't just about surviving anymore.
Yeah.
It was about thriving, innovating, and building something truly their own.
Okay.
And this wasn't just happening within the walls of the church.
So this creative energy was overflowing into other areas of their lives as well.
Absolutely. Music, art, literature.
Right.
You see this explosion of Black expression in all its forms.
Wow.
It's like this incredible outpouring of creativity that had been suppressed for centuries was finally being unleashed.
It must have been an incredibly vibrant and exciting time to witness this cultural renaissance taking shape.
It was, and all of this was fueled by that newfound sense of freedom.
Right.
That belief that they could finally chart their own destiny.
Right.
But it wasn't just about celebrating their heritage.
Yeah.
They also used their newfound agency to fight for social justice and equality.
So the Black church became a powerful force for social change as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It provided a platform for activism, a space where they could organize and rally for their rights.
Okay.
It became a central hub for the civil rights movement, a place where voices could be heard and strategies could be formed.
It's amazing to think about how much they achieved, how much they built in the face of such adversity.
It's truly inspiring, right?
Wow.
Their story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can find ways to resist, to adapt, and to create something truly remarkable.
You know, it's incredible how this fusion of African and Christian traditions continues to shape Black churches even today.
It does.
The music, the rituals, the emphasis on community and social justice.
Yeah.
It's all rooted in this rich and complex history.
It's a living legacy, and it's constantly evolving.
Right.
Erskine describes this really vividly in Plantation Church.
Okay.
He talks about attending a funeral in Haiti and witnessing this fascinating interplay between the formality of the Catholic Church and the more spirited, emotionally charged practices of voodoo.
It sounds like a powerful example of how different belief systems can coexist and even complement each other within a single community.
Exactly. It shows that faith isn't static.
Right.
It's constantly adapting and responding to new contexts and realities.
It also reminds us that the legacy of slavery,
Yeah.
of those blended faiths born out of struggle,
Right.
isn't just something confined to the past.
No.
It continues to shape our world in profound ways.
That's a great point. This isn't just ancient history.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing story, one that continues to unfold and impact communities all over the globe.
So after taking this deep dive into the world of the Plantation Church, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What can we learn from this incredible journey through history?
I think it encourages us to question our assumptions about religion and its role in society.
Okay.
To see how faith can be both a tool of oppression and a source of empowerment.
Right.
Depending on who's wielding it.
Right.
It also reminds us of the power of the human spirit.
Yeah.
That ability to find hope and create beauty, even in the face of incredible hardship.
And it challenges us to engage with the complexities of history.
Yes.
To understand how the past continues to shape the present, to see the connections between those enslaved Africans who bravely forged new spiritual paths and the vibrant communities who carry that legacy forward today.
Well said.
This has been an incredibly powerful and moving deep dive. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of this fascinating and often overlooked chapter of history.
As you continue to explore these ideas, ask yourself this.
Okay.
Were these truly new religions being born in the crucible of slavery? Or was it a testament to human resilience adapting for spiritual survival?
Wow.
The answer might surprise you.
Until next time, keep diving deep.